Primetime Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. From good and simple tax to Gabbar Singh Tax, there is little doubt that GST has become a highly political issue. Most experts agree that teething problems persist. This is apparent in the regular changes that the GST Council keeps making, tinkering with rates, ease in filing returns, relief to exporters, etc. All of these are steps that have been taken. In fact, a slew of measures to ease GST further are anticipated in the next meet. But despite all of this, the pain recall of the goods and service tax persists. So is GST really a Gabbar Singh tax? To talk about this, we are joined this evening by A.K. Bhattacharya. He is Editorial Director of Business Standard. Praveen Khandelwal, National Secretary General of CAIT, is also joining us in this conversation. Thank you so much for speaking with us this evening. Mr. Khandelwal, I had spoken with you before the festive season when your organization had claimed that cash shortage plus GST is going to lead or is leading to a 40% reduction in sales. Now, 4 months after GST, do you think that there has been an improvement?
Well, precisely speaking, because of certain glitches in GST and non-smooth functioning of GST portal has placed the traders at the hands of harassment, because couple of hours people used to be there at the computer, try to log in, and still it is not successful. Every time there is an error. Beside all these things, the 28% tax slab is another area which is not liked by the consumer and the traders. So if we need to summarize the 4 months of GST, we can say that yes, we have moved ahead, but certainly there are many issues which needs to be tackled immediately.
You know, Mr. Bhattacharya, it's become interesting, and we started this debate from this point about why this is becoming an election pitch. And of course, in the state of Gujarat, where elections are due, it might resonate more, or opposition parties may hope it resonates more because there is a huge business community. But is it really irking people that much? My quest is to, sift the facts from the rhetoric. Is it really Gabbar Singh tax?
This is not a Gabbar Singh tax. But at the same time, nor is it a good and simple tax. So the truth lies somewhere in between, which is composed of the following, which is that structurally there are major flaws in the GST that was rolled out on July 1. And procedurally, there were many glitches that are now being sorted out over the last few weeks. So what we have now is a recognition on the part of the GST Council that those glitches have to be removed. For example, the composition scheme, the coverage being raised to 1 crore. In my view, why 1 crore? Why should it not go up to even 2 crore? Because you don't lose much revenue as a result. So because, up to units above 10 crore account for 80% of the revenues. So if you really want the GST to be smooth and make it really change the way people come into this system, then I think your start has to be smooth so that people have the buy-in. Now, what has happened is you have got too many slabs. Your rates are relatively higher than it ought to have been. And then you have got the procedural problems which have created embracing the problems for embracing the scheme. So while people are paying taxes, people are filing returns, but they would rather be happier if they were made to file the return, let us say once a quarter. For example, now the government GST Council has said that those who have a turnover of less than 1.5 crore rupees, they can file quarterly returns. There is no reason why every taxpayer cannot file the return quarterly. You can pay your taxes every month, but you can file your return once a quarter. So, these are procedural issues which are being sorted out So as a result of the structural problem and as a result of the procedural problems, you have a situation where this has not been a good and simple tax. This has been a tax which has caused a lot of problems for, especially for the small and medium enterprises.
Yes.
But the good news is the government and the GST Council are acutely conscious of this. As a matter of fact, the Revenue Secretary recently said that he is looking forward to some rejig in the GST structure.
No, in fact, there is hope that in the next meet, more items will be removed from the 28% slab. There is a push on including GST within MRP. Now, is all of that actually helping? Abhishek Rastogi joins us now in this conversation. He's partner at Khaitan & Co. Welcome to the debate, Abhishek. We're asking that is GST really Gabbar Singh tax or is it good and simple tax? Simply put, the question is that are people now getting used to it more and more?
Yeah, I think it is very pertinent question, and I think a lot of things which are happening are around the systems, are around a lot of writ petitions which are going to the court. So I think if we see the overall scenario today, we have to be optimistic also at the same time. I understand that, the small businesses, the medium-sized businesses are facing a lot of challenges, and I think there could be a couple of measures which the government wants to take, has taken and should take more aggressively, is to support the small businesses and the medium-sized businesses. But I think what is encouraging to learn or to see is that a lot of these writ petitions which are going to the courts, a lot of these issues which are going to the courts are being addressed by the government in a very, very pragmatic way. And when I say very pragmatic way, is that they also realize somewhere that some of these drafting problems have happened. So for instance, it all started with the writ being filed for the advocate services. So, but there is a notification now. The other matter which went to the court was in the case of Narendra Plastics. And I think the government within a week, the interim order was just granted, and much before the final hearing, the government took appropriate steps or measures to promote the export businesses. So I think there are a lot of other problems which have gone. So this week there's a writ petition which has been filed with respect to the transitional credits, the time limit of 12 months or with respect to the 6-month period for the supplies to happen. And there are other writ petitions which have gone to the courts in case of banking services, whether this IGST section 7.5 and imposition of this tax when the branch renders services to the head office, or for the matter the liaison office is rendering such services. So and the government is thinking with respect to those issues as well. So there are a plethora of issues which have gone. It could be like ocean freight, the taxability of ocean freight which has gone to the courts. So I think one aspect is with respect to the statutory provisions, or where the statutory provisions have gone beyond the constitution powers, or there is excessive delegation. So I think from that perspective, the government is able to take those decisions, or basically these more and more writs are coming to the courts. Let's just put this in
perspective. Sure, let's just put this in perspective. No matter how and when and in what form GST would be implemented, there would be teething troubles. There would be a process of getting used to a new system. One can look at it both ways, of whether the government is panicking or it's positive that they're responding to queries. But Mr. Khandelwal, I want to come to another part of this narrative, which is not often spoken about. And there are two parts to it. One is that it's the unorganized sector which is suffering more. There are certain sectors like, auto components or textiles which are suffering more. But also it is the problem of a lot of businessmen who are not used to having everything in the public eye, or in white, as they call it. Everything that can be scrutinized by tax authorities. And that is part of the pinch. Would you agree?
Traders never want to hide anything. But just imagine a situation where a trader want to issue the cash memo and consumer resists because the GST tax is 28% or 18%. What trader will do? Should the trader lose the customer, or should the trader issue the material? So my point is that we also want that recorded business should be there, but for that we need to have a simple and cohesive system without
I have a
having
poor line there with Mr. Khandelwal, and we'll try and fix that. But I just want to come to that point, Abhishek Rastogi, as well, because there's a lot of anecdotes of people now saying, "Acha, don't give us a bill, we don't want to pay the GST." And on the other hand of it, you do have businesses who are not used to keeping their books, and accounting for everything to that extent, and that's hurting as well. It's also a matter of habit forming.
See, I think there's a very mixed answer there, and I think the Indian businesses will now have to learn to pay taxes, and to a very large extent this question is again very important and pertinent, because a lot of these mid-sized businesses were not habitual of paying taxes, and we know for a fact that a lot of these transactions used to happen in cash without being accounted anywhere. So I think that has to certainly end. If we see that whether GST will help us in the long run or not, certainly I think the industry was supporting GST, all the stakeholders were supporting GST. So of course there will be some teething problems, but at the same time that the businesses and the customers will have to learn to bear that burden of taxes. And I think, yes, to a very large extent, it's right that people who are not habitual of paying taxes, suddenly when they realize that there is a tax element of 18% or 28% on certain luxury items or supplies, there is always, a thought that whether these transactions could be done without payment of taxes. But I think the mechanism which has now come, or the GST which will be implemented in the true sense, because there will be matching, there will be input output norms which will be seen, there will be cash balances, etc., which can be scrutinized. There is a much better way to track transactions now. So all that will help the government to improve the compliances in the long run, improve the tax payments in the long run, and of course gradually the rate has to come down. We have to now think what is the right time for reduction of these rates. But of course, as the compliance improves further, the rates will come down.
In fact, I'm just going to close with one comment from Mr. Bhattacharya, that usually paying a tax is not a very popular thing to do. People don't like paying taxes, but this government did manage to make GST into something that people were very excited about. Is there enough political potential in trying to pin this government down on GST as the opposition is currently trying?
I think the government's political this as an idea whose time has come, but in the implementation stage, the major mistake that was committed was by keeping so many rates, as many as 6 to 7 rates, and that too at a relatively higher level. Now, if you wanted to make it palatable and acceptable to a system which is not used to paying taxes, then probably the taxes could not have been 18% and 28% for a large number of items. And more importantly, by creating so many slabs, you are actually allowing lobbying and discretionary decision making to be in play. So therefore, while the political intention was correct, I think the implementation stage, the government or the GST Council, to be precise, actually made a mistake by creating too many rates, too many exemptions, and in imposing conditions like invoice matching, which technologically the system, the GSTN, was not yet ready. Even today, the group of ministers meeting is actually examining whether the GSTN network can actually arrange for the kind of invoice matching which is becoming a must before anybody can claim input tax credit. So therefore, your ideas must match up with the action on the ground. Unfortunately, a good idea with good intentions, I think, has met with these avoidable glitches, avoidable problems because of technology problem and because of too many rates, and that too, some of the rates are at the higher band.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Good and simple tax or Gabbar Singh tax, it's somewhere in the middle, was the first comment that started this debate, and it's the perfect one actually to close the whole conversation because GST is something that the industry asked for a long time. It will take time to smoothen out, but at the end of the day, no one really likes paying taxes. One hopes that the passage gets easier over time.